Finding your place in routines. The guest. Attachment. Benzie arrived at the Swindle and Swine after dawn. It was the beginning of fall, the air was cool and crisp. He brought 2 logs into his arms and, balancing the load with a huff, reached into his pocket to fetch a key to the kitchen's back door. Pushing it open with his hip, he entered the inn to gently lay the logs next to the kitchen's blue and gray fieldstone hearth. Alina Hogsbreath, the inn's proprietor, slept above the kitchen, and Benzie was mindful of her comfort. Going to the wood stack on the porch, Benzie used a hatchet to cut kindling. He dipped the ends in a ceramic jar of pork fat kept on the floor and lit his starter in the fireplace. Thereafter, Benzie pumped water into a tin pail and filled a black iron cooking cauldron suspended over the hearth. When the water touched its surface, blazing orange runes activated along its rim. Propping the logs up over his fledgling starter and, taking a chip of ignited kindling, Benzie lit a dozen beeswax candles stationed around the kitchen, bathing the room with warm, soft yellow light. The magic cauldron brought the water to a boil in less than a minute before its glowing runes faded. Retrieving a scoop of lye lard from the basement, Benzie used the MIT to pour hot water into the pail and added the lye. He mopped the kitchen floor where a mosaic of quarter-inch tiles depicted a green tree of life. By the time Benzie entered the dining hall, the early morning sun spilled through the tavern's paned circular windows. Above, an iron chandelier covered in melted candles hung from a thick chain. A taxidermied warthog wearing an entertainer's top hat was mounted above a hearth of mortared limestone. And the inn's big, round burgundy door was shut for the night. Getting to work, Benzie lifted chairs and benches to table surfaces to mop the hardwoods. He scrubbed the hall, the entry, and the stairs leading up to the suite on the second floor. After, he cleaned behind the bar and the hall connecting the kitchen, pantry, and larder. Benzie followed a well-rehearsed pattern to keep his feet off the wet floor. Finally, he dumped the dirty water off the edge of the back porch and stowed the mop and pail in a narrow storage closet found behind the bar. Lighting a fire in the tavern's fireplace, Benzie spent the rest of the morning arranging tables and wiping down surfaces. It wasn't long before he smelled frying sausage. Alina was up and preparing her kitchen, and his tummy growled expectantly. A Lightfoot, young, fit, and thin, admittedly too thin by halfling standards, the Benzie Fernbottom preferred to keep his chestnut-colored hair disheveled and untrimmed, his pointed ears poking out along the sides. He had thick eyebrows, a sharper nose than most, and an eager, wide smile that would give a stranger the impression he was up to something. He wore a white-collared, button-up shirt with a handsome brown and green vest and matching pants cut at his knees. And like all halflings, Benzie didn't wear shoes, he was barefoot. "Merry mornin', Truffler," he said happily, standing on a chair to dust the mantel with a cloth. Benzie proudly squared the top hat on Truffler's head and patted its crown for good measure. Saving the inn from Marin Maloney over the summer was the highlight of Benzie's life, and the villain's hat reminded him of his place here, a place where he was loved, a place where he felt needed, a place that needed him. "Mornin', Benzie," Alina hallooed, carrying a serving tray of breakfast tea. Middle-aged, Alina wore a cream-colored frock under a brown corset and a kitchen apron over a pleated skirt that extended to her ankles. A signature white sunflower graced her left ear, and curly brown hair rolled over her bare shoulders. She smiled graciously at Benzie. "I'll have your breakfast out quick and spit." "Thanks, Alina." Benzie waved, jumping off of the chair. "Open her up, will you?" "Sure thing." Benzie joyfully replied, pushing the chair under a table. "Oh, you're such a dear," Alina smiled and went to her kitchen. Benzie unlocked the front door and pulled on the knob located directly in its center. It creaked open, sunlight raced into the room, and Benzie could see particulates of mussed-up dust drifting in the air. Stopping the door with a river rock, Benzie stood at its threshold to inhale the fresh scent of fall pine, and he stretched, extending his arms behind him to arch his back. He rested his hands on his hips and kicked out his left leg to rotate his ankle. "Phew," he said smartly to himself. He folded his arms and grinned, feeling the sun's warmth on his nose. It would be another beautiful day at the Swindle and Swine, Ponderoak's only inn and tavern. Halflings didn't have a use for money, and, as a people, they abstained from hoarding wealth. Instead, they bartered, trading their time, effort, passions, and skills for what they needed. Although Benzi's service could have been construed as a job, he found joy and purpose in the work, and Alina was only too happy to feed him. What resulted was an understanding between them, an unspoken agreement common to the halfling folk of the Evilorn parishes, where one back was scratched for the benefit of another, where everyone got what they needed, and nobody ever went wanting. Alina re-entered the dining hall with Benzi's favorite breakfast, a steaming hot Scotch egg served with a dipping sauce of mustard, vinegar, and white wine. Dressed over a sprig of chilled kale accompanied by 3 freshly cut apple slices. As Benzi cut through the crisp fried sausage, runny, bright yellow yolk spilled across the plate, saturating the kale to make it reasonably palatable. Benzi inhaled his food, beginning with the apple slices first, having not quite learned how to savor a well-prepared, simple meal. Alina ate her own Scotch egg with her fingers, an outright rejection of the fussy table etiquette some halflings believed it demanded. "You'll turn over the upstairs and that'll be all for the day, Benzi." "What?" Benzi gasped through a full mouth. "But, the linens, the side apartments dash. There'll be no guests at the inn tonight," Alina shrugged, nibbling at her egg to expertly keep the yolk from dribbling. "But why?" Benzi was flabbergasted. "It's a tradition, of sorts," Alina said nonchalantly, chewing her breakfast. "I'll be up late and you needn't come over in the morning, not unless you're hungry." Since last winter, Benzi had never experienced a day where he wasn't needed at the Swindle and Swine, and the disappointment quickly settled in. The bevy of chores, his practiced routines, the satisfaction gleaned from folding fitted bedsheets perfectly clearly, this wasn't how he imagined the day would go. "But Alina," he swallowed. "What will I dash?" "You'll get out of me way and go enjoy yourself," Alina said, cutting him off. She smiled at him kindly. "You'll find your friends. Go fishing. Take a hike. Or you'll go sits quietly, ruminating on a hill, whatever pleases you." Benzi glanced ruefully at Truffler across the hall. You don't need me?" Benzi asked, setting his fork on the bar, his eyes sad and confused. No, Alina chuckled, patting a comforting hand on his forearm. "I'll still be expecting you the day after the morrow." Why will you be up late?" Benzi asked side-eyed, his mind eventually coming around to process what she'd said. Finishing her breakfast, Alina wiped her hands on her apron. "Now that's my business, Benzi, and nothing you need concern yourself with." Benzi felt a cold chill run down his arms. Alina never kept secrets. "What's wrong?" he snapped, fearing the worst. Alina smirked as she pulled back her hair to tie it behind her head. "Benzi, nothing's wrong. Just come round the day after next." "But Alina dash." "PSSHHH," Alina jeered, dismissively flinging her fingers at him. She escaped from behind the bar into her kitchen. Benzi, dismayed, ate another bite of yolked kale but stopped, for his favorite breakfast didn't have the same flavor as when he started. Descending the stairwell, the guest staying in the upstairs suite entered the tavern. Marinus Layton, a Galewind man in his prime, was dressed in a comfortable lined sheepskin jacket, boots, and leggings. He brought his gear, pack, and short sword with him. Marinus was new to the parishes and unfamiliar with the local taboos against wearing shoes indoors. Still, he was warmly accepted at the Swindle and Swine, all the same. "A merry morning to you, sir," Benzi said despondently, barely looking up from his plate. "Is it?" Marinus scoffed, throwing his scabbard's leather strap around his shoulder. Benzi sorrowfully picked up his plate to take it into the kitchen. "Mr. Layton," Alina cheerfully cried as she entered the tavern with his breakfast. She handed him the plate while, in her other hand, she set a glass decanter of orange juice on the bar. "Citrus?" Marinus agreed, taking a voracious bite out of the Scotch egg after plowing it indelicately into the sauce, sending hot yolk and mustard streaming down his fingers. Prepared, Alina offered him a moist Galewind-sized towel draped over her forearm. "Where you headed?" "All way from Brackleknock, are ye not?" He repeated, gruffly wiping himself with the towel. "I'm for Inseros, to make a new life. I lost my sister to a Gorgon." Benzie emerged from the kitchen as Alina gasped, putting a polite hand over her mouth. Marinus Layton explained Brackleknock was beset by a terrible curse. Overnight, a teenage girl was transformed into a snake-headed monster whose gaze turned onlookers to stone. Many lives were lost, not just his sister's, and having no other reason to stay, Marinus went to Inseros to find work. Benzie, his spirits already low and suffering, looked at him, appalled, and blurted, "You left her." "Benzie," Alina hushed, shaking her head at him. Uncertain how to respond, Marinus ate the rest of his small food-sized Scotch egg and said, "Well, she's, a statue now. None of us, we didn't have the heart to smash them. They were friends, relatives. So we dug a pit, and we buried them. Together. All of them. But you left her behind?" Benzie whispered, unable to fathom why anyone would do such a thing. "Benzie!" Alina exclaimed. She went over to where Benzie stood aside the bar and whispered, "Galewind traditions ain't like ours. Now, head on upstairs and pick up the room." Benzie grumbled and, with a long, moody stare at Alina, dashed upstairs with a healthy dose of displeased stomping. "You'll have to forgive him," Alina apologized, picking up Marina's plate to wipe down the bar. "Benzie's young'un never set foot outside the parishes." He grunted and guzzled the juice from the decanter so fast it ran down the side of his cheek. He used the towel to clean up and hoisted his pack to his back. Marinus removed a narrow purple gemstone from his coin purse and tossed it on the counter. "Acceptable?" Alina needn't even look at it. She just smiled and said, "Yes. Thank you for staying. Have a safe journey." Benzie lugged a bundle of linens down the stairs to toss them on the tavern floor. He used a corner to wipe the sweat from his forehead. He had finished with the upstairs suite and was, disappointedly, done for the day. The inn stillness made Benzie uncomfortable. At this time of day, the swindle should be bustling. Benzie should be turning over the adjacent apartments, serving drinks, greeting new guests, or wishing others a fond farewell. Morosely checking outside, Benzie encountered no gossiping, giggling, tea-sipping, ale-belching patrons on the porch. All he found was the cricketing and crackling of late summer insects and a charming, handwritten sign hung from the doorknob which read, "Come back soon." Loathing that sign with every ounce of his being, Benzie put his back against the door to close it. And then, he realized, on top of everything else, Alina wasn't cooking. There were no smells of baking bread or sizzling pork, no chopping or grinding, clinking, clanging, or banging, no kitchen clamor whatsoever, and no pleasant humming Alina made when she was preparing meals. Feeling a chill, Benzie rubbed his shoulders and shivered. The oven wasn't stoked and the place felt like it was freezing. Benzie felt very small. To him, the inn felt deserted, evaluated as if it had stopped breathing. Addressing Truffler, he implored, "Why? What is this madness?" And the stuffed warthog glared at him silently from above the mantel. "Ugh, you, too?" Benzie exclaimed. He ran his palm through his hair and, resolved, slapped his knees and said, "Right." Alina Hogsbreath used an old broom handle to stir a barrel of soapy linen behind the inn. It was a lovely day. The sun was warm. There was a splendid fall breeze accompanied by the sound of rushing wind over the tippy-tops of the pine trees, and, as the swindle was closed, she didn't feel any pressure to. "Alina!" Benzie barked as he marched headstrong out of the kitchen. Upon reaching her, he stubbornly folded his arms, leaned in, and popped open his eyes expectantly. "Benzie," she asked. "What is it?" Benzie demanded, nervously tapping his foot. Alina frowned at him. She stopped stirring the barrel. "What's what?" "This nonsense," Benzie exclaimed, rolling his wrist at her in a flourish. Come on. Tell me. Is something wrong? Did you catch a fever? Is it the pox? She guffawed. Oh, Benzie, I'm fine. Really? Is there more I can do? Do you need more help? Alina smiled and said, No. If you've cleaned the upstairs, everything that needs doing is done. Thank you. Benzie put his hands to his waist as his foot continued to tap on its own. He opened his mouth as if to speak again, thought twice about it, then held his tongue. Benzie, this is normal. I realize you're unaccustomed to me ways, but I close the inn once a year, every year, on this day, Alina explained. She used the broomstick to agitate the linens, whipping them around in circles. Me grandmother did it, me mom did it, and I does it every year on the same day, this day. Why? Benzie demanded. His foot pounded the earth like an angry jackrabbit. Why close the inn? Alina rolled her eyes and slumped her shoulders. 'Cause taking a rest is a healthy and sane thing to do, but if you must know. Benzie's ears perked, his brows jolted up, and his foot stopped. Alina sighed, I'm expecting an old friend for tea. She arrives late, as is her custom, and will stay for the night. Still keeping his arms folded, Benzie reared back with a puzzled expression. A late-night traveler? A visitor? Every year, on the same day? Yes, every year, Alina confirmed and returned to her work. Benzie scrutinized the information with an inquisitive finger under his chin. That's very peculiar. Alina shrugged, saying, It's her way. Jetting out his foot, Benzie relaxed his posture and exhaled. Ugh, is all he managed to say. Alina stopped washing the linens and straightened her back. Benzie, you're young, and you've got a lot of attachment. Like this morning, with Marinus. Just 'cause something isn't our way doesn't mean it's wrong, or the only way. And if I be closing the swindle, it ain't a slight on you. Things just are, and if you'll be helping me round here, you gotta learn to accept what is and keep yourself from the center of it. Am I making sense? Benzie, feeling a wave of guilt, cringed, and he looked to his feet. Go home, Benzie, Alina encouraged, and she looked side-eyed at the pine trees behind the inn. Sensing his bruised feelings, Alina figured she needed to give him something to look forward to, so she added, If you'd like, come by on the morrow. I'll cook you breakfast and introduce you to me friend. Then Benzie perked right up. He smiled and gripped his vest's lapels. Now, help yourself to some carrots on your way out, Alina smiled and gestured to the kitchen. I won't use them all before the end of the week. Sleep in. I'll see you mid-morning tomorrow. Tight-lipped, Benzie nodded thankfully and waved goodbye as he climbed the porch's steps and entered the kitchen. He raided the pantry to take carrots and celery sticks and smeared a serving of oily peanut butter into a ramekin. Grabbing a mug, he poured himself a bit of cool brambleberry lemonade. Drinking it all down and setting the mug in the sink, Benzie wandered from the kitchen to enter the dining hall. Slowing his pace, Benzie opened the door to the narrow supply closet behind the bar, entered taking care to leave the pail and mop undisturbed, and closed the door behind him.